Professor Darity, what I really wanted to start off with is to talk about the difference between wealth and income. So often we confuse those two. And what I understand following Shapiro's work is that we didn't really get wealth data until the mid 90s on African Americans. For a long time, we just got income data. And so I just want you to explain that, and then we'll move on from there.
Yeah, I would also say that we didn't have very detailed wealth data on any Americans, black or white, until the late 1980s and early 1990s. And so there's kind of a veil of over the information we have about those kinds of differences. I guess I'd like to begin by saying that from the standpoint of the way in which we think about this as economists, income is a flow and wealth is a stock. Wealth is the difference between the value of what you own and what you owe, or the difference between the value of your assets and your debts. And in effect, it is kind of the net value of the property that you possess. And that's a little bit different from income, which constitutes a flow of receipts that you get from things like earnings, or if you're a recipient of transfer payments from the government, that's a flow of income. If you own stocks and bonds and you actually get some interest that you use in a particular year off of those stocks and bonds, then that's a form of income also. But the real thing to think about is the notion of wealth as something that constitutes the property that's in your possession that can be transformed into income. And so it's something that is potentially income, but it's not something that you have to convert into income at all times. And the more you have, the less of it you'll ever have to convert into income.
And I think that one of the things that really jumps out from that review is the importance of history and particularly family lineage. And I think some of your work, which we'll get into, really draws that distinction. One of the studies that I've looked at is a study you might be familiar with that took a large sampling, and it actually came out with a number of, top 5% of black families. You only got to have $350,000. Half of black families are below $6,000 or $7,000 in wealth.
Right.
And it's interesting when you contrasted that to the white side of their study, which showed that 10% of white homes were above $1.4 million. Nearly, when we're talking about 80 million homes, nearly 8 million homes, and the middle white family is worth about $100,000, meaning that of the 80 million homes, 40 million have more than $100,000 in worth. And
right.
I thought that one of the interesting nuances was when we saw from Edward Wolfe, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with this as well, where he showed that when you take out the depreciating assets, which shouldn't be included anyway, the effect on black wealth is just drastic, whereby the middle black family goes from $6,000 to around $1,700 when you take out that family car and the couch, which shouldn't have been included anyway. Whereas for the white family, they go from $115 to around $100 because, of course, they have a car and a couch, but it doesn't eat their whole $115 up in the same way.
Right. That's, when we did this study at the Metro, we did a series of these studies at the metropolitan level. One of them is one that you paid close attention to, which was the study on Los Angeles. But the study in the city of Boston was especially striking because the middle black family in the city of Boston had a net worth of $8 in around 2014. And if you were to look at the distribution of white families and take the family that's at the middle of that distribution, they have about $250,000 in net worth.
And if you look at this next chart, it shows that hard work isn't good enough. Look at the person working. Look at the black person working part time, and what that black person has in terms of $4,000. And look at the white person has $100,000. They both working part time. The unemployed black person has nothing. It's probably negative. And the white person has $21,000. Working full time, you see the black person is $11,000, the white person is $101,000. This is insane. Like, how do you not understand that the entire black community is in collapse right now? These are collapse. This is collapse numbers. This is collapse data. And I will leave you, with the cue with the video that I was sharing you a little while ago with the professor. What we're looking at now is a community in total collapse.
All right, so we're talking about, back to the professor talking about hard work.
Yeah.
Narrative, there's some kind of black dysfunction, personal irresponsibility, and the like, must explain these kinds of differences. Well, there's a study that Wolf and Gittleman did in 2004, which we are trying to update, which actually demonstrates that if you control for household income, the black and white savings rates are equivalent. And actually, in some income categories, the black savings rate is slightly higher than the white savings rate. Now, that's said in the context of a society where the savings rate is relatively low by international standards. Okay, you could say nobody saves in America, but if you look at the actual measured savings rates in their study, there is no significant difference between blacks and whites. Even more pronounced is their finding that there is no significant difference in rates of return on portfolios once you control for household income. Okay? So household income, once you control for household income, there's no evidence of any kind of behavioral differences that are significant. Okay? But the other thing I want to emphasize is the...
All right, we're back.
Now I want you to think about something. Something he said there was very important. If you control for household income, the savings rates of blacks and whites is the same. If you control for income, the black and white savings rates are the same. That means that we're not poor because we're out spending money. We're not poor because we're spending.
It's not the hair.
It's not any. What that shows is that it's not anything that we're doing. Anybody who tells you that we're poor because we're doing stuff is just not telling you the truth. Because what he just said there is that even when you control for household income, we save the same as whites. In some instances, we save a little bit more. So first of all, there's absolutely no reason to blame ourselves for what's happening. There's absolutely no reason to blame ourselves for anything that is happening or anything that has happened. Right? This is the consequence. This is the consequence of blackness. That's what we're living through right now. We're living through the consequence of coming from a slave. Now, I've said that before, and I don't want to depress you. I saw somebody say that, well, this is depressing. I understand that. But when you're in a depressing situation, you look for a way out. And people have been asking me for how long? Yvette, like, what's the solution? What's the solution? The solution, one of the solutions, there are many solutions. I'm sure there are a lot of things that we should try, but there has to be some type of intervention, because what's happening is white people are passing down. White people are passing down money, and we don't have any money to pass down. So this just becomes an unending cycle unless somebody or something like the government intervenes and gives the people who don't have money money.